Academy Mentoring, December 2020. Interesting cases, developing your resources, using evidence. So we've been going on a deeper dive with these general questions. And I'll make a point of linking those videos up above. Today, I want to talk about specifically developing your deep resources when it comes to our field. We'll review a little bit of some of those essential things from part 1 and 2. And we'll talk about particular strategies that can make you be a successful lifelong learner instead of having 1 year of experience 20 times over. So let's get started. Quick review. In part 1, we talked about asking your patient questions, doing a deeper dive with patients that have unusual diagnoses. We talked about observing and being curious and looking for patterns so that when you see someone that may have the same pattern as another patient, they might not have an appropriate diagnosis, that you question and wonder, and it's like, might there be a better diagnosis? In part 2, we talked about how we want to well represent the field and what we do understand about the field, because we are experts in the field, to physicians that might not be experts. And in doing so, develop those relationships with those physicians. And those physicians, absolutely, as you develop those relationships, are a part of your deep resources. They are experts in stuff that we're not. When you've developed those relationships, it's exceptionally easy to ask them, hey doc, can you please explain this to me? Give me a little more insight here. Help me understand. Now, those things are essential. The next thing I want to cover is actually one of my habits that I make all of my residents, I make it their habit too. And maybe you were taught this in school, maybe you've done this as a part of your practice, but I want to be very intentional to draw attention to it and to get you thinking about it in the context of being a lifelong learner. We call it Precall, Plan, and Debrief. And I'm just going to cut to the essentials of it. Before you step in the room, you have some sense of what you're there for. You took a quick look at the chart or the prescription, their diagnosis. You are setting in your mind what you expect to see and what you expect to happen. And you are intentionally choosing some type of learning experience on the front end. I want to have better questions for this patient. I want to work on my motivational interviewing with this patient. I want to see if what I'm imagining is the physical presentation of this diagnosis is what I see when I walk through that door. So intentionally bringing an educational component to the pre-call plan before you step through the door. And then debrief. Debrief, a couple simple questions from that. Any surprises? And reviewing what you had set to do as your educational pathway on the pre-call plan, and talking over what you did see, what you did learn, what the next step may need to be. If you get in the habit of doing that, it's exceptionally easy. It really isn't going to take any more of your time, but you will set a pattern of learning all the time. So, in part 1, we talked about regional pain syndrome. I knew it when I got to know it as sympathetic reflex dystrophy. Let me tell the story of how that would have developed in the context of pre-call plans and debriefs. So I, at one point, had a patient that had a diagnosis of sympathetic reflex dystrophy, and they were seeing me for an unnamed orthosis. I was unfamiliar with the diagnosis. This was before Google, so I couldn't just Wikipedia it or Google it up. So I asked the patient questions. This was a patient that had significant pain in their left hand, and they were talking to me about quite literally making a protective plastic cover so that their left hand would be protected from any type of banging or touches, because it was excruciating for them to go through that. This is a person that had a fully functional left hand, but they were completely disabled by the pain of that problem. Now, I learned a lot from them. When I walked out of there, I talked to myself about that. Wow, I learned about. That's interesting. I wonder what goes on with that stuff. I need to find out more. So I did go to the physician that had diagnosed that and inquired about a few things. One of the crucially important things for me in my continued career after that was discovering that part of the differential diagnosis of that is a temperature difference between the affected limb and the unaffected limb. That little bit of learning then played out through the course of my career. What do I mean? Well, through the course of my career, I kept seeing these patients that had these symptoms that I'd learned about earlier. I'd learned a little of the differential diagnosis. It was something exceptionally easy to do by moving your hands from one limb to the other. And these are patients that were coming to me for orthoses that had no diagnosis. So being able to, on the spot, recognize, wow, feels familiar, looks familiar. I wonder if their temperature might be different. Wow, lo and behold, it is. Then either a conversation with the physician or the patient to have with their physician, might be possible that you have sympathetic reflex dystrophy, now called regional pain syndrome. So by the nature of our field, we get these kinds of patients. By the fact that we see them a lot, we can develop these skills to be very thoughtful and helpful in getting patients the right kind of treatment and assisting a patient getting a good diagnosis. And if you're not intentional about your learning and developing your relationships with your physicians and learning from your patients, you might miss that entirely. So, great example, great story of how little quirky pathologies can wind up being something where you get to know it quite a bit if you're intentional about your learning and get to make a difference in people's outcomes because of it. All right, another resource that we haven't talked about yet when it comes to lifelong learning and extending your deep. Let's start with the professionals you work with. Even if you're in a small office or a remote location, there are going to be other professionals, other prosthetists, orthotists, whom you work with that probably have some type of specialty, and you want to get to know that. You want to get to know the little parts and pieces that they may be passionate about. You want to ask them questions to learn about their experience and to make them part of your extended team. So it's important, it's essential. When you do that the right way, people love to tell you about their knowledge and experience and make it available for when you do have more challenging cases. But that's not enough, because crap, I've been doing this a long time and I love it when I have patients that exceed my abilities, because When you've taken the time to be intentional in the way that you learn, the way that you think, um, part of what you want to do is develop your extended deep resources. And those may be, you might be um, people that you met while you were going to school that came in for a particular specialty. Maybe you should, wow, they were a Halo specialist. I'll keep that as a resource. I'll make a point of developing a relationship on LinkedIn. So if I get to the point and I have a tough question in that, I can reach out to them. A lot of times, a good place to develop those deeper resources is at our professional meetings, at the academy meeting, or even your state meetings, because frequently you're going to have uh, professionals that are either speaking on a particular subject, and you can engage with them, learn from them, develop them as a resource for when you may have something along those lines. But a lot of times too, the professionals that either are associated with a product or they're on behalf of a product are fantastic resources. I would tell you, like Copart's a good example. I mean, look, right now with what they do, if you have a complex, high-level upper extremity prosthesis that you think myoelectric's gonna be the way to go, call them up. They'll help. They have people that specialize in it, and they will walk with you as you do it. But there are plenty of other professionals that are like that, so that, yeah, if I'm outside of my comfort zone in this particular area, there's someone for that. I'd like to mention the listserv, the O&P listserv as well. I'm a little less excited about that, but certainly sometimes that's a good place to go for interesting answers to challenging questions. So make a point of developing those deep relationships. Make a point of going to state meetings, national meetings, of interacting with people that represent different products and people that have presented at those meetings to build. When I run out of my depth, I do know where to go to next. Now, that's within the field. And yeah, you should be doing that. But let's talk about going beyond just our in the field. When it comes to pre-call, plan, and debrief, and the world we live in right now, Google and Wikipedia are absolutely fantastic for your medical stuff, or WebMD, or whoever you want to use as the resource. But if you're getting pathologies that you don't know about, you should be on there and discovering things. As you deepen that, if you have a patient that's involved, maybe you learn even more because you're learning from them and you're learning from your physicians and you're learning from the reading that's available. So don't neglect those simple, easy, accessible things that we have now. But I'd like to talk about extending your learning and your deep beyond what's strictly our profession. Because there's two ways this can make a real difference. One is our profession is so tiny, we have to borrow and steal from everything else in the world to really advance our stuff. We didn't invent advanced composites. We didn't invent the use of titanium and stainless steel in medical devices. We are not the experts at wound care. We're not the experts in diabetes. There's a whole huge world of physicians that are committed to just that stuff. And if you make a point of developing your professional network that's beyond just the simple field of O&P, you'll be in a lot better position that as innovation changes, new studies occur in those other fields, to be aware of them and tied into people that can answer questions or that are on LinkedIn publishing their articles and inform you years before it comes to general knowledge in our field of good science and things that'll make a difference. So I'd encourage you, as you develop your deep resources, to explicitly think, yeah, who's the physicians that I want in that mix? Who are the engineers that I want in that mix? Who are the computer science folks that I want in that mix? Who are the material science people that I want in that mix? And look, this is a great opportunity if you have some peculiar passion about something that's in those areas, to run with it, to have some fun with it, to understand that, yeah, this isn't going to immediately contribute to my success as an orthotist prosthetist, but here's something that's loosely related to what we do that I would expect every once in a while something comes up and it can mean something for our field. All right. Another place of lifelong learning. And the cool thing about this is it's way more accessible than our tiny field. If you're a professional, there are other professionals in very different fields that have the same problems that you have. And it's wonderful if you can find places where you can connect with those people. It could be as simple as something in your town for, business professionals. It could be more focused as far as developing communication skills with other business professionals, developing sales skills with other business professionals. It could be that you just go out of your way to have coffee or lunch with other people sort of in a same career path as you, but they're not O&P. Maybe it's a PTOT. Maybe it's just somebody that's developing their career at the bank or an engineering firm. But it's important to know that none of your issues or problems are unique to the world, and other people are going through similar things. And understanding that, it's great to find other people that are serious about their learning, serious about their career, serious about their profession, and the kinds of struggles that they have, because they are great resources to continue your education, to get some relief from some of the stressors that you're facing, and it's helpful to realize that, yep, there's crappy employers everywhere. There's challenging people to communicate with everywhere. The grass is not greener just based on the field. We live in a very special field where we get to make meaningful differences to patients, and it's very immediate. We're fortunate in that regard. And I hope that you see that good fortune, that you're grateful for it, and some of the struggles that just come with living in this world and working for organizations don't dismay you and discourage you from being passionate and taking care of patients. And this is where having those contacts outside our field and those groups and those other people that are committed to what they're doing can be really helpful, because you're like, yep, It's not unique to me. So, I hope this helps. We're going to wrap it up with some summaries. Keep your wonder. Be asking questions. Go with a plan, with a habit, a pre-call plan and a debrief. Fill in the gaps when it comes to that with your resources. Google, Wikipedia, physicians, patients, your extended network of people in related fields, and your specific network of people that are passionate about what they do, but don't work in our field. So I hope this will help you become a lifelong learner that has new and fantastic experiences year after year and winds up with a fulfilling, wonderful, meaningful career that's not 1 year of experience repeated 30 times. Bye.